WIBX 950.com. Jeff Manaski, Jeanette Lenoir, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Are you nervous?
Yes, I would be lying if I said I wasn't. I'm very nervous. This is my very first time assisting you. This is my first look.
Jeanette, of course, joined us a couple months ago now, and some of our morning listeners may not be familiar with you because you're primarily on in the afternoon and the evening. So Jeanette Lenoir joining us. She joined our news department a couple of months ago, and she's sitting in today for the vacationing Jim Rondinelli. Wouldn't you like to be on vacation today?
Yes.
Nice day to lay in bed. It's chilly and damp out there. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're joined in studio by, I almost said Congressman Richard Hanna. Congressional candidate Richard Hanna. I'm going to try to get all my words in order here. Good morning. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How you doing?
Good. We've got a lot to ask you about today. In the second half of the program, I'd like to open up the phone lines. Maybe the listeners can ask some questions. There we go. Here's my note card here. A lot of topics I wanted to ask you about. First, it's all over the news today. The U.S. Supreme Court is going to be hearing arguments on whether or not protesters have the right to protest outside of military funerals. I've seen some of the signs. They say things like, "Thank God for dead soldiers." Essentially, the feeling of this group is that God is punishing the U.S. military because the U.S. is tolerant of gays. Any thoughts on these protesters, whether they should be allowed to do this or not?
One of the interesting things and great things about this country is freedom of speech, First Amendment rights. Also, though, with every freedom, I think, comes an obligation. I think it's morally repugnant that they would do that. But I also understand that free speech is part of America, and that we protect free speech when we don't like it as well as when we do. I think it's terrible. I can't say whether they have a right to or not. My suspicion is that they can do this under their rights to free speech, but it is reprehensible.
Speaking of free speech, campaign advertisements, it seems though that today, and I'm not specifically talking about your race, but in many races, it seems you can say whatever you want to now about your opponent.
Yeah, apparently it doesn't matter if there's any truth in reality or based in anything whatsoever. They just can say and do what they like. It's kind of pathetic because people need more than that. They need leadership. They want principled ideas. They want to know where you stand on the issues. But in my case, the first ads my opponent ran were right in the gutter and largely dishonest. 30 years or so of doing business, we had a very few $1,000, I think under $4,000, maybe closer to $3,000 of miscellaneous fines. Handful of lawsuits, 4 or 5. Third-party actions. I've never paid a dime out for bad work, ever. They were all dismissed. He says we overcharged, but the overcharging was change orders, which if he had ever had a job outside of government, he'd understand that that's very much a fixture in what I did, construction. And I've done over 2,500 individual projects, employed over 450 people, had a great career, and if they want to try to change that, maybe they can change the public perception. But for everybody who knows me, everyone I did business with, everyone who ever worked for me, we have a great reputation, and I'll put mine up against anybody's in this business.
There's also a mention in the advertisement about contracts that you receive. I don't know if it's from the state or the city of Utica. It mentions when.
Right. To begin with, Mr. Arcuri's gotten a lot more government checks than I've ever seen. And my business was working for municipalities. We worked for the state. We've worked for the federal government. We worked for the Power Authority. That's what I did. And everything we ever did was publicly bid. We were either the low bidder, or once in a while the low bidder would be disqualified for one reason or another. And that means I provided value for the price we bid. We were often a lot lower than other people. I ran a very competitive, quality business. I have worked for every administration for 30 years, including the Rufaro administration. We've done work for them. My sister has. And so that's the nature of what I did. It's a small community. I think people are sensible enough to see through it. It's just kind of, I think, a very vain attempt to soil my reputation, try to imply something that isn't there. Believe me, they've spent tens of thousands of dollars of looking into my past. I've gotten calls from schools and municipalities that say the DCCC has called or foiled something, and what do you want us to do about it? And I say, do what you have to do. Just give them the information. There's nothing there, and I'm proud of my history. And frankly, part of the problem of running for office like this is that anybody who's had a life outside of government has something that they can twist or turn and make look worse than it is. And I think that's why we wind up with some of the mediocrities we have in government today.
Let me ask you this. The ads that we're talking about, and I'll refer to them as attack ads, at the end, Congressman Arcuri appears, and I don't know if it says he approved the message or he paid for the message, but essentially it means it went through him and he gave his approval.
Absolutely. That's what you're required to do. I have to do the same thing.
But I've seen ads that were critical of him, and I didn't see you or your name at the end of them. I see there's one where he talks about, the ad talks about the bailout, pretty much, and that he voted for it, but then he didn't vote for it.
Those are, I think they're called 527s. Those are outside groups that come in and advertise either against someone or for someone, or just issue-based ads. So we don't know who's doing them or when they're going to come, but they do happen. And for better or for worse, this is a targeted race by a number of people who are disappointed in his record. And you've seen 2 or 3 of those. One of them is Americans for Job Security. The NRCC, which is the Republican Party, has a couple out. People have to look at them, I think, and decide for themselves whether they're accurate or not. My hope is that they're absolutely accurate. Ours are. Last time and this time, we never ran an ad that anybody said was untrue or even exaggerated. And we're not this time. The facts are the facts. We print them out. We disperse them to the media when the ad's gone out, and we try to run a hard hitting, if you will, but honest campaign.
You've got ads out. It seems your ads focus on what you've done. I haven't seen an attack ad from you.
Well,
are they coming?
Attack.
Are they coming?
We have a couple out that talk about Mr. Arcuri's record. His support of the deficits, his support of the stimulus bill, his back and forth on health care, those kinds of things. I mean, they speak to his ability to lead. I think they speak in many ways in a substantive way to his desire to stay in office rather than do the job he's paid to do. But we're not twisting the truth. What it is.
Okay, I mean, I'd like to, if you have any specifics about any plans you have about if you get elected, what would you bring to the table? What are your thoughts on TARP, the bailout, which many would say helped keep unemployment a little below 10%. Without the bailout, some are saying it could have gone up to 18%, and it's saved millions of jobs. What would you do differently if you were to win this race against Arcuri?
What do you mean specifically?
About what are your thoughts on TARP? What are your thoughts on the bailout and the effect it's had?
Stimulus, that kind of thing?
Right, exactly.
Okay, easy enough. I have mixed feelings about the TARP, which is probably opposite of most Republicans, certainly in my party. I saw some need for it. I think it was too expansive. I think that there were certainly victims in TARP, homeowners and that type of thing. There were a lot of bad loans, and I think the government stepped in at a time that everyone was in a panic to back up these banks and give them the resources they needed so that they weren't flooded with bad loans and bad properties that they couldn't unload. They allowed some people to keep their homes, other people to keep their businesses. Generally, I just thought it was too expansive, though, just way too much, and wasn't necessary. The stimulus package, I think, was by their own accounting, was an utter failure. It was a policy and social agenda. It hired tens of thousands of new public employees that are a structural part of our future costs now. Less than 90% of it, rather less than 12% of it, $90 billion or so, went to those things that we absolutely create jobs overnight or quickly. That's construction.